For player profiles, in-depth features, and exclusive interviews, visit sfhandbook.com to learn more about the best young football players in the world. Hello and welcome to the Scouted Football Podcast. Happy AFCON to all those who celebrate, including today's guest, African football expert and Guardian Sport Deputy Editor Ed Aarons. Ed is the author of Made in Africa, which is a chronicled and extensive history of African players in English football. It's a great read on confronting racism, challenging stereotypes and plotting the pathway for some of the most identifiable Premier League protagonists to do their thing nowadays. I suppose, Ed, how are things? How have you been finding AFCON 2021?
Hi, how are you? Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, it's been amazing so far. Really enjoyed it. I think it was a bit of a slow start, but no lack of drama nonetheless. And, you know, the second round of matches has been really exciting. You know, some great storylines with Algeria losing their unbeaten record in the latest round of matches. So it's going to be a really good tournament, I think. And it's only really just getting started.
Yeah, it is. It's just warming up, really, isn't it? And you say that. I mean, we were talking just before we started recording. You know, the last 20 minutes of games have been pretty much where all the action has been, and it's been a great tournament for that sort of thing. You know, all the drama, but also lots of tournament firsts, lots of really good football as well, and I suppose plenty for us to sink our teeth into with regards to the group stage so far for this episode. Obviously, you've got the refereeing incident between Mali and Tunisia, which saw Yanni Sakazwe blow for time twice before the 90th minute. Rightly or wrongly, will be a notable moment from this year's edition. But focusing squarely on the football, which is it's ultimately why we watch it for the spectacle. You know, we've had hosts Cameroon performing really well, Guinea and Senegal grinding their way to the knockouts, Nigeria looking on good form. A mammoth goalkeeping performance in Sierra Leone's opening two games from their goalkeeper Camara against firstly Algeria and then Côte d'Ivoire, following up the Algeria performance when I think he made around 6 or 7 saves with a penalty stop in the second game. First win at the finals for Gambia, first appearance for Comoros. Mauritania are there. There's been loads going on. It's been a tournament for the ages, and I think I was quite disappointed in myself that we didn't do a preview episode, but I don't think I would have been able to do it justice. The first few rounds of matches have been a real education.
Yeah, and there's been a lot. I think it shows the general strength of African football that you had. The match that I mentioned. First of all, Equatorial Guinea, who are no mugs by any means. You know, they've been around in previous AFCONs and have got to the semi-finals when they hosted it, or when Gabon hosted it, I believe. But for them to beat Algeria, and to end that long unbeaten run is real testament to the strength of some of the smaller countries in Africa. You know, it's not got a population of less than 2 million, I think, Equatorial Guinea, and for them to pull that off, they had to ride their luck at times, but that they really deserved it with the way that they continued to sort of try and attack, even though they were holding on at times to keep that clean sheet. But yeah, and there's, like you say, I think Sierra Leone, for me, have been the team of the tournament so far with those 2 draws as well in that group. So that group is set up to be fantastic finale. I mean, you've got Algeria against Ivory Coast, two of the heavyweights, slugging it out, and it looks like, they could still both go through, but Algeria will need to win that to get through. So it's going to be a really great game.
Yeah, Group E, obviously what you're referring to there. Algeria currently bottom of that group with 1 point, no goals scored. Sierra Leone in third with 2 points. Equatorial Guinea with 3 points in second, and Ivory Coast currently first with 4. So all very much hanging in the balance as Ivory Coast and Algeria have to play each other, and Equatorial Guinea and Sierra Leone in their final group match. But it'll come as no surprise to anybody that we're here to talk about some of the young players at this year's tournament, as well as the competition in general. I think I counted 1 16-year-old and 2 17-year-olds in the squad lists. Can't claim to know too much about any of them, but I'd certainly be fascinated to find out more. Understandably, they haven't had a huge role on proceedings so far, but it's notable in itself that they are there. We'll get onto those in a little while, but tournament highlights, Ed, what have been some of your favorite moments so far?
Well, definitely, as I said, Sierra Leone. Managing to get 2 draws so far.
Mm.
I think if we go through the groups, group by group, then obviously Cameroon have been absolutely spectacular, and I think they're going to be really tough to beat at home. It's a long time since they lost a game, of significance at home, and there's a sort of general feeling, I think, that they are going to be really tough to stop. The country is getting behind them. I think there was something that the president's given them all, time off. Like university lectures and school lessons are going to finish before the next game, and I'm sure that's going to be the same as the tournament progresses. So they're going to be really tough to stop. I think the way things have moved on since the start of the tournament, maybe you could say they're the favourites now. Really impressive. Them or perhaps Nigeria, obviously, have been very impressive as well. Some really, really great performances. I was very pleased to see Joe Aribo doing so well for Nigeria amongst all those sort of superstars. Somebody who's come up through a different route in the English, non-league system, and alongside people like Chukwueze, who is coming back to his best at Villarreal, having been injured, and obviously Iheanacho, who's been great so far. I think those two look like the two to stop. But then, Senegal have been a bit disappointing, to say the least. Only managing to beat Zimbabwe with a 97th minute penalty from Sadio Mane, and it was a heroic performance from Zimbabwe up until then, but they kind of threw it away after that. So, and then Senegal obviously struggled against Guinea, and I think a lot of people might be writing them off a little bit at this stage. But it's a long tournament, and I wouldn't say that there's anything to worry about too much for them. And then also, I think one of the surprises actually have been Gabon, haven't they? Because had so many problems in the build-up to the tournament. Aubameyang hasn't been playing, but they're still managed to sort out qualification already, and with Morocco from Group C. And Ghana looking extremely precarious as it stands, but could still scramble through. And it's good to see. I think some of the big names coming to the fore. I know Salah had a bit of a quiet game, but got his goal and the win in the next game for Egypt, and I think that is important for the tournament, that some of the big players do come to the party as well, because it's been a great mixture, hasn't it, of locally based players and the big stars performing. So it's exactly what you want. It's great for the local leagues, like for instance the Sierra Leone team we were talking about beforehand. There's quite a few players there from the local league who are really been absolutely outstanding, and that's great for football on the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned that Sierra Leone team, and obviously you've got Mohamed Salah, who's obviously probably the household name of this tournament. Arguably the best player in the Premier League at the moment. And then you have the potential that further down the line, he may end up coming up against Mohamed Camara, who's in the goal for Sierra Leone, who plays for East End Lions in the domestic league. And he's in our under 23 bracket, because he's only 22. So we'll speak a little bit about him. But I mean, yeah, I agree with you there. It's been a good mixture of, some of the big hitters doing well, but also a few surprise packages, which ultimately is kind of what you want in a major tournament like this, because, it would be a bit boring if the best teams were simply blowing away the smaller teams, and it was essentially the knockouts were a foregone conclusion after game week or match day 2 in the group stage. But they're all pretty much still in the balance to a certain degree, which is it's exciting. It makes you tune in to the third and most consequential fixture of the groups. But I mean, in terms of standout players, and I mean bonus points if you can come up with some under 23 ones. I mean, we can start with Mohamed Camara, who gave that excellent post-match interview after his man of the match display against Algeria. He's very obviously really tearful and just really overwhelmed by the emotion of it all. And I think that in sort of in an interview, as a microcosm, just shows how much this tournament matters to those who play in it. I mean, I think I saw a video yesterday of loads of Sierra Leone fans, just running along the road in Freetown, which is obviously, as you'll know, the capital city, and that was after securing a draw, to keep them in the fight against Cote d'Ivoire. And the tournament means so much. But in terms of 23s players, there's been quite a few who've done reasonably well, as well as the more senior ones, such as your Salahs and your Vincent Abubakars.
Yeah, one in particular I wanted to highlight, and I didn't mention Gambia earlier just now, but Gambia have been an amazing story, haven't they, of this tournament, and currently sitting top of their group. They're going to go through to the next round. And Moussa Barrow in particular has been outstanding for them. Somebody who's pretty well known in Serie A. He's been at Bologna for a couple of seasons, and he scored a late penalty against Mali to get a point, which means both teams are going to go through. And before the tournament, I thought Mali were, and I still do actually. I think Mali could go quite deep. So the fact that Gambia managed to get a draw against them is fantastic for them. And generally, I think the team is pretty young. It's there's a bit of experience in there, but the squad has got quite a few players that are 23 and under. So and it's lots of talent coming out of there. Such a very small country population wise, but certainly not in talent.
Yeah, I mean, you say that it's quite a young team. Obviously, Moussa Barrow, 23 years old, playing for Bologna, has been sort of on the scouted radar for quite a few years now, because he's always just captured the attention whenever he plays. He's very dynamic. Does always come up with these sort of end of game moments as well, which is just quite something. But Ebrima Darbo, who's 20, playing for Roma this season under Jose Mourinho. Ebrima Colli, who's 21 at Spezia, also in Serie A. And I think there is something to be said, about the relationship between Gambian players and seeking a route into European football through Serie A, because obviously you've got Omar Colley as well, who's been at Sampdoria for a few years. But I mean, top of their group, drawing with Mali, which you probably would have put Mali as favourites for that one. They have done really well, and I think in terms of 23s players being a young squad, I think Jallo as well, who's done all right. He's 23 as well. So there's been a few.
Yeah, it's a really interesting country because a lot of these players. I don't know how many of them in this squad actually, but I know that I did something about Moussa Jawara, who
Yes.
Bologna as well, and the route is not not a conventional one at all by any means, because these are refugees, some of them who've made their way from the Gambia overland. And then some of them, crossing on rubber dinghies across the Mediterranean to get to Serie A, basically. But that's not the case with Moussa Barrow, who was actually scouted from the Gambian League. And I think that there's quite a good pathway there now, obviously, because the number of players that are in Italy, not just Serie A, but just the lower leagues as well. So it's obviously a fertile, area for them to develop, and it's great. That just shows you what it is needed, just an opportunity for one particular country in another country, and it can lead to this kind of team.
It's trailblazing in the most, the realist sense, isn't it? I mean, when you see the success stories that have come out of Gambia in Italy, and that's obviously going to attract the attention of the movers and shakers who can make decisions and in terms of scouting and recruitment departments, and make them sit up and think, okay, well, Gambia is somewhere we need to be looking at. If there are players with Moussa Barrow's potential there, we need to be exploiting that.
Exactly. No, it's because the profile of African players, it's such a big continent.
Yeah.
And not everybody is the same, in every country, but there is a general profile of players from around different parts of the continent. And I think that a lot of clubs in Europe are discovering that, it's not just the stereotypical, the old, 3 or 4 different types of players, but there's so many different types of players and physiques. And, for instance, I mean, Zambia aren't at this tournament, but, you have Enoch Mwepu and Patson Daka, two players that I know you guys have followed for a long time, but that's yet another potential place that could be recruited from that just wasn't being looked at before. So it's great. This is how these things happen. It's a very organic process, isn't it?
Yeah, I think organic's probably the right word for it. And I mean, there'll be other countries which that's been the case for. I mean, just purely looking at young squads, I think Guinea have got another young team. The likes of Mohamed Bayo, who's 23, playing for Clermont Foot in France, who's doing really well this season. He's almost tipping double figures in goals and had a great year last year in Ligue 2 and in the French lower leagues before that. Agibou Kamara, who's playing for Olympiacos in Greece, he's also playing for Guinea at this tournament. One name I was really surprised to see on the list, and then also surprised not to see featuring in the opening game, was Elijah Marieba, obviously formerly of Barcelona, but now at RB Leipzig. He's only 18, so one of the younger players at this tournament. But it was actually another teenager of Guinea's that I'm quite conflicted on Saïdou Sow, because he's 19 and I give him a lot of allowances because, obviously of his age and experience. He's playing for Saint Etienne in France, as you'll know. And, he's a goal threat at the set pieces purely because of his stature. He's a very aggressive, defensive, right-sided centre-half, big tackle volume, big pressing volume. His pressing success is exceptional. Sort of had a look on FB Ref, and it was across 900 minutes, it was something like he was in the top 1 or 2% of defenders across Europe's top 5 leagues. And then I watched Guinea's game, their opening fixture, and it was very much the same. At the same time, I do think he moves quite ungainly at times, but does look to play forward rather than carrying the ball. So maybe that's kind of an area that he or coaches have recognised maybe it isn't his strength, and try to mitigate that. But I mean, he's a player who at 19 is playing in a major tournament for his country, alongside those other Guinean players that I mentioned. Another young squad, and obviously you've got them and Senegal currently look as though they're probably going to go through from Group B. So we might see a little bit more of them further on in the tournament.
Yeah, and there certainly is a developing side. It has been for a few years. I remember seeing them at the last AFCON, and it didn't really get going in that one. But I think that result against Senegal would do them a lot of good, confidence-wise. And it is a young team. It's one that is going to get better. It's a very young population in Guinea. I mean, like most of Africa, has a very young population. But Guinea in particular, I believe it is. And hopefully they can do something, because it's been quite a long time since they've had any sort of run at AFCON. It's been, the glory years for them were quite a few years ago now. So, and obviously Naby Keita in there leading the way with he's a bit more experience now, 26. Hopefully he can, take this new generation forward to some great achievements.
Obviously, you mentioned Naby Keita there, and I completely forgot that he was also Guinean. So there goes my research in the bin. But he's it's been a great tournament for young players, as I mentioned. But sort of what I like to do with these episodes is maybe throw out a name which people haven't heard before. And while the Saïdou Sow will be familiar to anyone who follows Ligue 1, there's a player for Tunisia who I'm not sure if you'll have seen this game last night, but there was I think was it 4-0 or 4-1?
I saw the highlights of it. Yeah, it was 4-0. Some
4-0.
lovely goals, actually.
Yeah,
really lovely goals. Really, some great slick interplay. I know Mauritania are one of the weakest teams probably at the tournament, but still, it was a very, very slick bit of interplay. And the Sub-Saharan. I know Tunisia lost their opening game to Mali, and the Sub-Saharan, the North African teams playing in Sub-Sahara have struggled, but that was very encouraging for Tunisia. And scoring that many goals gives them a great opportunity to get through as well, goal difference wise. So.
Yeah, especially after losing that first game, you'd want to bounce back immediately, and obviously they have done by taking Mauritania to the cleaners. But there was a player in there, Anis Ben Sliman, who is a Danish-born Tunisian midfielder, plays for Brøndby in the Danish Superliga, and he picked up the assist for Wabi Kazri for the second goal for Tunisia last night. And he's a player that I'm quite curious to know more about, to watch a little bit more of, because he's typically the most deep line and central midfielder, received from the centre back type player, but he does like to move through the gears. He can, I wouldn't quite say chunky, but he's robust, and he can ride a challenge. I again wouldn't quite say press resistant because he does forfeit possession a fair bit, but does beat pressure well when he's sort of careering through challenges, or if he's caught up in traffic. He'll try and bounce or just ricochet that ball through. And I think he's a very adept player. I was really pleased to see him obviously starting that game against Mauritania. I think he came off around 70 minutes, but he's someone who's always going to try something. And at 20 years old, it's good to see that somebody who has come through at a club like Brøndby. He's played Danish football, European football with them this season. That hasn't been coached out of him. I quite like the fact that he recognizes his physical strengths and thinks, well, actually, I'm going to put that to my advantage.
Yeah, I mean, the Danish system is very, very good. They produce some really good footballers, and it's got an interesting mixture of skills, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody like that. And there's Tunisia have got quite a few good young players. I think it could be an interesting generation for them, couldn't it? With Hannibal Mejbri, who's at United. And has done pretty well when he's been given the chance. And there's a few others as well around.
Omar Rekik as well at Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think he came on last night, sort of for the last 10 minutes or so when the game was pretty much tied up. But good that he's been called up and shows a bit of, I don't know, what would you call it? The fact that obviously Hannibal has not played any sort of minutes for Man United, but is being called up to the Tunisian senior squad, and similar story for Omar Rekik.
Yeah, I mean it's good. I mean it's good for them.
Yeah,
but it probably shows that the standard's not that high. But I think it can only be good if a player is good enough to play at that level and to get them immersed in the team culture. The younger, the better, really. If they are good enough, and there's reports that Hannibal's going to get promoted to United's first team now, having performed well out here. So that's what it can do for you, international football. If you prove you can handle that, then it's the highest level out there. It's probably still is. I think, even though a lot of people say that the Champions League is, and the technical standard is, but it's a different prize, isn't it, when you're playing international football? You have people who raise their game very much because it means everything to them, doesn't it? So
yeah, because that's the pinnacle of their careers. For a lot of these players at AFCON, there will not be a greater honour throughout their entire playing career than representing their country, perhaps for the first and only time at a tournament like this. So you will get players who are right on top of their game. And I think as well, having watched a lot of youth football, you can't simulate the physical challenge of playing senior football, whether that's at a major international tournament like this one, or just coming off the bench for 10 minutes in a league game in your country's top flight. You can't simulate that. So again, being with the squad, training every day, coming on in games, starting games, just that valuable experience will be a signal. It'll be a marker to clubs like Manchester United and coaches at whichever teams these young players are at, who maybe don't have a wealth of first team experience, that actually, they can handle themselves. They're up to the challenge, and obviously they'll be getting feedback on the performances from the various scouts and analysts who are out there checking up on them. But I did want to talk about two of the youngest players at the tournament, two 17-year-olds. And I'm not sure how much you'll know on them, Ed. I definitely don't know an awful lot. But there's one for Ghana, one for Côte d'Ivoire.
Yes.
Abdul Fatawu Issahaku, who I apologise, I must have butchered that name somewhere. But I've got it sort of spelt out phonetically on my crib sheet here. He's 17, plays for Dreams FC in Ghana. Obviously representing Ghana at this tournament, came on in their first game of the competition.
Yeah, I do know a little bit about him actually, only via my colleague from the Made in Africa podcast.
Yes, of course.
We spoke about him a little bit on the preview actually. Rahman Osmond, my colleague who works for London World, and he's very excited about him. Anyway, I can tell you, like you say, I think he started out with his local club at 15, and was a bit of a phenomenon and remains a phenomenon. And he's got the call up, and obviously really part of their plans going forward. Whether it's a bit early for him, I don't know, but yeah, has been given a chance in this tournament, and it's fantastic to see. Ghana have got a great reputation for producing young players, and perhaps it hasn't happened the last few years. And it's not the strongest team that they've got in Cameroon at the moment, but this is really exciting local people. Apparently, the fact that there's a young local league player who's establishing himself, as one of the main players in the national team, amongst all these so-called superstars, because Ghana players have not performed very well over the last few years, and despite having some of the most well-known names, still in Europe, in most top 5 leagues, there's quite a few players there still, but they just haven't really done very well. So I think this has been quite. His arrival has given people something to look forward to.
Would you or did you put Ghana sort of in your pre-tournament favourites, or maybe in sort of the peloton, the chasing pack of
No, I was a
behind
bit.
the Algerias?
To be honest, I didn't. I don't think I said this on the other podcast I'll preview, but I was a little bit negative about them. I didn't expect them to do that well. And yeah, Rahman was a bit more positive. He expected them to get to the semi-finals. So
Oh wow, okay.
yeah, but they have a great pedigree at this tournament, but obviously haven't gone all the way for quite a long time. They're normally in the latter stages, but yeah, I don't think it's a great generation. It's hopefully there's better things to come, because this generation of players has been around for quite a long time now and not really done that much. So I think some fresh blood might be needed.
Well, here's hoping that the 17-year-old striker from Dreams FC can provide that little bit of impetus. But there was another player who's 17 at the tournament. I think there's 2 or 3 for those who are interested. But the other one which got my attention was Karim Kanate for Côte d'Ivoire, and he is also playing at this tournament. I don't think he has made an appearance yet, but he's definitely in the squad. He plays for ASEC Mimosas in the Ivory Coast. By all accounts, one of the strongest, if not the strongest and most identifiable team in that country. But is there anything that you know of Konaté, Ed?
No, not really, to be honest. But yeah, as you say, ASEC Mimosas is one of the most famous development clubs in Ivory Coast, and again, it's a generation which is flattered to deceive, hasn't it? You look through their squad list, and it's a fantastic list of players, isn't it? It's but not really achieved that much. And yeah, it's good to see another youngster there. And there's not really anybody anywhere near his age. The next oldest player I can see is like 21 with Hamid Traore at Sassuolo. So it's quite a big age gap, but it also, it's so young to be at a major tournament, isn't it? It's
yeah, definitely
great for the experience.
2004 born. I'm never gonna get tired of saying that and thinking, Jesus, I'm old, because it's just.
I'll get used to it.
Oh yeah, honestly, yeah. To think that Karim Kanate was not alive for Ronaldinho's chip on David Seaman at the World Cup in Korea and Japan, Jesus. But yeah, no, he played some games for Ivory Coast in the warm-up fixtures, in the warm-up friendlies. Just came off the bench against Mozambique and Malawi, but has remained on the bench so far for them. But I did watch a few of his goals that I could, and he seems to be quite alert with that. If the goalkeeper spills it, or maybe if there's a ball coming into the box, that striker's movement. So hopefully we get to see some of that at some point in this tournament. And based on how the group is looking at the moment, with Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast in that group, they are top. And provided that they don't, well, I think it's probably safe to say that depending on the result of the Equatorial Guinea Sierra Leone game, they probably should go through. But don't quote me on that.
I think that they're through already. I think if you've got 4 points, you're through. But yeah, again, don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
They're not through. They're assured of finishing the top 3.
Yes,
yeah. We don't know for certain as yet, but I think 4 points is basically going to be enough, isn't it?
Yeah, 4 points should be enough, because obviously the 4 of the 6 third place teams qualify for the knockout rounds as well. So if you've got 4 points and you're finishing third, the likelihood is you're probably going to be one of those stronger teams. But yeah, that should be an interesting one. Ed, I wanted to get your stance on sort of maybe a few predictions for the knockout stages, because things can turn on a sixpence, as we found, with Algeria coming into this tournament. They were my favourites. Now they find themselves bottom in their group. They're really up against it in terms of having to qualify. A defeat will knock them out. A win might not even be enough to guarantee automatic qualification. So I've definitely had to revise my my predictions from pre-tournament to sort of 2 games in, and I think Algeria. I'm not looking too clever with that prediction now in terms of who'd be the eventual winner.
No, I think I thought that they might struggle, but only on the basis of that North African teams don't do well in sub-Saharan Africa. It was really only based on that.
Well, there's the expertise, though. That is the expertise.
I buy into that sort of. I think that's quite an important factor, isn't it? Normally, history doesn't lie.
Northern and Southern Hemisphere teams, playing each other in World Cups in different.
Exactly, it's a similar thing, isn't it? Like European teams never used to win in South America and vice versa, and it still pretty much holds true. It's such a difficult thing. Egypt are the only team to have won in sub-Saharan Africa, and obviously they've won 7 times. So they are. It's not to rule out those teams though, because anything can happen. But I think it's more likely that it's going to be someone from sub-Saharan Africa that wins it with. And I think like you say, Cameroon and Nigeria, obviously they look the strongest, but it rarely happens that the team that looks the strongest in the group stage wins the tournament, does it? So it's more about a steady build normally, isn't it? So I'd still like to think Mali are going to go quite far, but it really depends where they finish in their group. It's very important because they may be thinking it might not be best to win the group, because it sets up if they do win that group, then they're going to set up a match with second place in Group E, which could be really anybody, couldn't it? From Ivory Coast, Equatorial Guinea, Sierra Leone, or Algeria. But I think Mali, given a fair win, they're going to be really tough to beat. They don't concede many goals, and they've got some great players. And interestingly, from a youth point of view, they don't have such a young squad now, which I think is probably quite a good thing, because it just shows that they're evolving that generation that have done them so well in the youth tournaments over the last few years, and they've matured into a senior team now. So I think they could definitely be a side to watch.
Yeah, they have, haven't they? I mean, they did so well at previous youth international tournaments. We did a podcast with Ben Botchak on the Jean-Marc Giroud Academy in Mali I say a couple of months ago. It's probably about a year ago now. But if you're interested in listening more about Mali exclusively, then do go back through the Scouted Football archives, and there will be an episode on that. And Ben on that episode does sort of foretell that Mali should do well at future tournaments, because this squad is essentially coming of age now. Yves Bissouma, Diadi Samaseku, Moussa Djenepo. I was really pleased to see Masadio Hadara there as well, playing left back.
I know big favourites. I know we're both a big fan of his, and it's a great team. They're a really interesting side, and like you say, it's been building up to this, I think, for a few years, and now I think they're ready to contest in the later stages.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of young players, and if people are keen to keep an eye on Mali in the knockout stages, which obviously it looks as though they'll reach, 2 players that I'd pick out is Ibrahima Kone, who's 22, plays for Sarpsborg in Norway. Who I think he hit double figures in the Elite Serie there this season, and Mohamed Camara, who's also 22, probably a little bit more familiar with, given that he plays for Red Bull Salzburg. Obviously done very well in the Champions League this season. But Mali are definitely a team to follow.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bissouma. I think that's the key one as well, because he hasn't played for them for a while. He's been concentrating on his club career, but they've got him, and he's obviously, everybody knows what a great player he is from the Premier League. With somebody of that ability harnessed with all those other players, it's a really exciting time for them, actually. That could be a real crackerjack game if they do end up winning the group and then playing, whoever it is really in that group of death it's become now, Algeria and Ivory Coast, etc. Then that could be a really great game.
Yeah, just looking at that table, you would not want to play anyone at the moment, because you've got obviously the surprise victory for Equatorial Guinea, Sierra Leone putting up a real fight in both their group games against the big boys. and then you've obviously got the might of Ivory Coast and Algeria. You wouldn't want to come up against them even on a bad day. So, yeah, they've kind of been dealt a bum hand there, haven't Mali? Depending on how they finish that group. But I think I'd agree with you, to be honest, in terms of not being able to look past Cameroon and Nigeria. Obviously, they've done well in the groups. You could maybe argue that Cameroon's group is weaker than some of the other teams who maybe haven't hit the heights that they have already. But Nigeria have been able to see off Egypt and then quite, I'd say, I wouldn't say comfortably, but it wasn't really they weren't put to the test against Sudan in their second group game. But the likes of Joe Aribo, the likes of Samu Chukwueze, and then quite a few others who have maybe in that same Mali age bracket, coming of age, your Ian Achos, your Taiwo Awanis, Moses Simon, these are all players who have been playing well this tournament. So
Moses Simon in particular, actually, I mentioned him. He's been fantastic. He's been really, really good. And Nigeria have had a bit of a chaotic build-up, and they've got a manager who's been appointed to take over after this tournament to lead them into the World Cup, playoffs. They've looked probably, aside from Cameroon, the most impressive team so far. And they've got so much talent. They always have so much talent. That's the problem with Nigeria. Is whether they can harness it into a team that's pulling for each other. But they really have this time, and Simon has been the outstanding player alongside Ian Acho, I think. And but I think there's plenty more to come from Nigeria over the next few years as well. It's a really exciting time for them. It seems to be clicking now, but it's just whether at the top they have, can be managed in the right way. And but they're really playing for this for Egwavon, who is the interim manager and has won AFCON himself before as a player. So that could be a great story.
See, there you go. That's the expertise that you get on the Scouted Football podcast. The behind the scenes nuggets of knowledge. But that's all from us on the Scouted Pod today. I'd advise throughout this tournament, throughout the knockout stages, to go and check out Ed's podcast, Made in Africa, because that it's a very good listen. It's informative, and it just keeps you up to date with everything that's going on. Obviously, this has been a little bit more player focused, as well as maybe a few predictions towards the end. But if you've liked this, then you'll definitely like Made in Africa.
Many thanks for that. Appreciated.
No, 100%. I mean, it is the go-to source for me. So I'd recommend it to anybody else. But have you got anything else that you want to plug, Ed, before we go?
No, not especially. I just want hope people are enjoying AFCON, because it's a great exhibition for these players. I know a lot of English fans see it as a bit of an annoyance beforehand, and but now everybody's used to all the players not being there, where they can just enjoy seeing some different teams and learning a little bit about some different countries as well. So it's a great tournament to get excited about, especially in the middle of English winter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great for any geography nerds like myself as well, or anyone who likes to hear obscure national anthems, because you get a bit of that. You get a bit of everything.
And also, one of the best things is also the nicknames, aren't they? I think.
Yes, yeah.
There's some great ones out there. The Comoros one has been getting a bit of traction, which I can't remember what it is now, but it's named after a shark fish, isn't it?
Fantastic. No, yeah. I literally had no idea about that. I'm still, in my head, I'm caught up with the Indomitable Lions. That's Cameroon, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. I'm trying to find what it is.
So obviously, Nigeria, the Super Eagles.
Super Eagles. And there's some great ones. What is it? It's the coelacanths.
Yes, yeah. It's like the prehistoric fish.
Yeah, prehistoric fish. It looks, they're always smiling.
That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Where they've come up with that is, they've plucked that from nowhere.
I think it must be a local fish, and it's around the Comoros. Yeah, but fantastic. That's what you've got to be named after, your local animal, whatever that might be. I don't know what it'd be for England, but the sparrows or something.
Far less inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah, the robins maybe. There we go.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been the Scouted Football Podcast with myself, Joe Donoghue, joined by Ed Aarons on AFCON 2021. I'd implore anybody to continue watching the tournament if they have already. Not that you'd need any persuading given how some of the games have gone, but if you haven't tuned into it yet, wherever you are in the world, then I'd fully recommend it. But yeah, stay safe, take care, bye for now. For player profiles, in-depth features, and exclusive interviews, visit sfhandbook.com to learn more about the best young football players in the world.